Honestly, I did not read much this past September because I've spent so much time prepping for October. But without further ado, let's discuss the September reads and then dive right into the October plans. Starting with 2-star reviews. Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. So way back in May, I got into the idea of creating my own digital garden, which is sort of similar to a second brain. They use the same technology and you put tags and stuff in what you're reading or researching or thinking about, and then based off of those tags you can see what kind of parts of the well you're re-dipping into that maybe you want to study and research more, or maybe you see like a connective theme throughout all of your reading and writing and that says something about you and your moment, or like you can sort of synthesize a whole bunch of things together and that creates something new. Anyways, I was really intrigued by the idea and I've been sort of a little bit obsessed by it, which is why I've been looking at different videos on how to do this well, on what the expected outcomes can be, all that kind of stuff, and I've just sort of been slowly working on it in the background. But this book drew me in because I thought like you can always learn more about other people's results with the quote-unquote second brain or the digital garden, and I wanted to know like how it had benefited or not benefited other people so I could get a better gauge on how long I'd have to work on it to see success, and also like what kind of results I can expect, because sort of the draw of the second brain is that it helps you create new ideas, or it helps you keep ideas that you otherwise are just kind of like fleeting and floating and don't get to do anything with. And I found that Forte's story was pretty compelling. Like they were using a second brain for an entirely different reason related to brain damage, loss of memory, and inability to remember, period. Their priority with creating a second brain, their idea on how to do that, their like software tips, tricks, all that kind of stuff was just not helpful to me. And I read probably about 70% of it before just deciding that this was not applicable and really not super engaging and moving on to something else. Next is going to be A Killer in the Family by Peter Ross Range. I knew this was a short nonfiction book and I knew it was about a dad sort of going crazy or snapping or whatever. I find that really interesting when a person is like seemingly very normal on the surface, just like your day-to-day guy, and one day they snap and kill a bunch of people. I had sort of been led to believe that this was a profile on a serial killer that I didn't know about versus someone who kills their family. And once the like reveal on him not being a serial killer but being someone who ended up killing his wife and his kids, I just was less invested in him. I am less interested in guys who just snap and kill their immediate family than I am people who are like hiding, to quote Dexter, a dark passenger. And I know that like overly romanticizes the serial killing aspect to use that kind of imagery, but at the same time that kind of dark secret, that ability for violence and gore and torture combined with your ability to integrate into like a family life is what really interests me. You kind of like having the pressure cooker build up and deciding to snap and take it out on your family, not so interesting to me. So I put this down probably 25, maybe 50% of the way through. Beyond the subject matter not being super interesting, I would also say this author's not a very good writer. I didn't find the prose engaging in the slightest. The way he told me things, what he was telling me, all that kind of stuff didn't feel very relevant or interesting, and that doesn't speak well to him as a narrative storyteller, period, or a historian either. Convinced me to continue reading. Rolling me into 3-star reviews, starting me with Gothic Tales by Elizabeth Gaskell. This was my Nevermore Notes book club pick this past month, and it was kind of hard for me to get through it because it is an anthology of a bunch of Elizabeth Gaskell short stories, and I did learn some interesting tidbits about Elizabeth Gaskell because I've never read about her before. Like, for example, she was friends with Charles Dickens, and out of all the stories I read, at the time they were published, only 2 of them were published under her name and the rest were published anonymously, which kind of gives you a little bit of insight into women writing in that time and how they were able to like kind of work around, you know, this being a man's world and social conventions that might prohibit them from reading. Gaskell herself was always really conflicted about her creative muse and her obligations in the home, and it was kind of interesting to learn a little bit more about that. With all anthologies, it's super hard to rate rate them. There were a couple stories here I really hated, but there were some bangers too, which is why it's here at 3 stars. I think if you're looking for something to read this Halloween season by Gaskell, I would recommend Lois the Witch, which is a Salem witch trials story. It's a little bit too long, but I love Salem witch trial stuff, and this delivers on pretty much everything you'd want from like Puritan life, Salem witch trials, all that kind of stuff. A little bit of a content warning on it is there is the British Empire is the best empire superiority kind of moment, and there's racism towards both Black people and Indigenous people written into the piece. It's not like over the top, it feels period appropriate, but I think for modern readers who might have sensitivities in those areas, this might be a turnoff for them. And then hands down, my favorite short story is going to be The Nursemaid's Tale, and I think this is perfect for a winter read, Christmas time, Gothic narrative. It's set in winter specifically, but it was very traditional in Victorian times to read a horror ghost story during Christmas, and this one I feel like is perfect for that. It's got a lot of those snow-filled winter wonderland kind of vibes. If you're interested in something like Turn of the Screw because you wanted the governess in an isolated area with a child trying to protect that child from ghosts, this is a much better version of that. Other than that, I do get a little bit of domestic thriller vibes from the overall collection because there was a surprising amount of them that didn't have any supernatural Gothic element in it and just were like the darkness of humanity. And in that specifically, it seems like Gaskell sticks to the home domestic sphere and the particular danger that women are in their own domestic sphere, or that people just generally are, and how close they are to that danger or death and don't even know it. The best example of this is probably going to be The Grey Woman, which I didn't love, but as like a culmination to the end of the collection, I think it sums up a lot of Gaskell's themes well. And next is going to be You Killed Me First by John Mars. This was the Weirdo Book Club read of the month, and I was a little bit nervous going into the book club meeting, which actually for once I've had before filming, because Hannah, who is the co-host of the Weirdo Book Club, loves John Mars, and I was like, I'm not a huge fan of this one. But it's not one that I actively dislike. It's more of kind of like a nothing burger to me. It's a story told from 3 different women's perspectives, and there's like a thriller killer aspect to it, and I don't feel like I can tell much more than that without giving it away. The book club as a whole seemed to think that one of the 3 women was just kind of there intentionally to misdirect, which is a shame because of the 3 women, that one was my favorite, and I really liked her story, her narrative, what she was trying to do, why she was trying to do it. I found her like interesting and compelling, and would have read a standalone that was just about her for certain. She does make a couple too stupid to live moves in my personal opinion that I won't get into for fear of spoilers. The whole setup of this story is on super shaky ground because it's about someone's childhood trauma and them getting revenge for that childhood trauma, and maybe I just don't understand enough of what's going on in England / the UK, because the way that gangs are depicted there is very different than the way gangs are depicted here in the US, as are the gang's motivation, the age category of the people in the gang, all this kind of stuff. And from that angle too, there's a gun in play at certain parts, and I don't know how this person got a hold of a gun in the UK. Like, that part's super American, but then they're going to bonfire night and all this other stuff that is like British. So I don't know, I feel like we didn't get a very good like characterization of the setting or the motivations or the characters or the culture. I did like this though in the same way that I enjoyed Bloom. Part of my experience that I really loved about Bloom is I loved seeing these 2 girls come together and like holding on to a suspense of disbelief that the serial killer I knew was coming in the back half of the book could be either one of these girls. Even though I strongly suspected, and it was strongly hinting it was this one girl, this other girl was giving up all these red flags and all these instances where I could see like a twist reveal where it's actually her. And with all 3 of these women here, I was always up in the air like, what would it mean to the story if this one's the killer? What would it mean to the story if this one's the killer? Even though it's very strongly pointing, like since chapter two to this one specific girl. And all the pieces don't perfectly align if it's not that girl who's the killer. But I do think that Mars gives us enough that you could imagine each one of them potentially as being the killer. The problem for me is where Bloom gave us plenty of drops and hints about who was the killer and like things that they set up and paid off. There are just a million gajillion twists in I Know Who Killed Me First, and they all come out of nowhere with no indication or a hint that could help you come to that conclusion before it happened, which leaves you kind of feeling like, sure, I guess that could happen. I guess this could happen too. I guess elephants could just rampage through this neighborhood while we're at it. Like, all of it is equally possible and meaningful in this work. Which, like, from a thriller standpoint is not very satisfying when you've spent the whole time trying to figure out who done it and whether or not you care. But I don't know, I can't go far enough into it to actually actively dislike it. It's just sort of like random and not very good, which is why it's here at 3. And that leaves me at 5-star reviews. The one and only thing here is going to be The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice, which is going to have a very long, probably 2-part workup for you guys once I'm done with it. I have been reading and rereading and reading and rereading this thing back and forth all month at a fever pitch to create that presentation. I really like it. Some observations that are somehow not going to make it into that longer video review is that, like, it feels very traditionally Gothic in the same way Bram Stoker's Dracula does. And that's in like this retro hopefulness about the future, the world around us, the feeling that the world is going to continually become a better, more equal place as we go forward in time. And I think that feeling is striking me particularly now because we're in such uncertain times. This book that's sort of set in 1983, 1984, for the first time in my life ever, gave me that nostalgia, make America great again kind of moment. Like, it was the first time I ever kind of understood that sentiment. And even with me understanding that, I still wouldn't go back to 1984. Like, yes, there was a lot of progress there as compared to when Lestat was human. And yes, those people seemed more unified in like continuing to make strides and pushing forward and searching for more equality, to stop famine, to give everyone medical care and housing. Like, there's a more unified front there than there is now, but things are still generally better here in the present than they were in 1984 as far as like equality and strides forward go. There's been a couple hiccups, and I do definitely feel like as a human race, we are a lot less unified in what we want to see in the future and what we think is actually important and meaningful to living a good life. There's a lot more people who are a lot less altruistic now, and I don't know quite what to do with that. And to a certain degree, it makes me feel sort of sad. Not that any of that is the Vampire Lestat's fault. Like, overall, I would say it's an exhilarating ride where Interview with a Vampire is like a journal into depression and misery. This is very uplifting and triumphant. I think it goes a long way to showing the range of tones that Anne Rice is going to give you in these Vampire Chronicles. On top of that, there's like some pondering philosophical elements like you would have seen in Interview with a Vampire, but it's interspersed with a lot of action that's very well written and like character focused and tells you something about the world and the character. And all of that rolls me into TBR, readathons, and fun times we're doing in October. For starters, my book club, the Nevermore Notes book club, is going to be reading Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier this season. I'm super excited about this. I've seen so many booktubers who have read this and highly reviewed it this past year. I know there's a Netflix show coming out, and it sounds like there's going to be some haunted house action or like some creepy, eerie, unsettling home stuff. And haunted house is my favorite scary story to read, so it's perfect for October. And this month, the Weirdo Book Club is reading The Reformery by Tananarive Due, and I really wanted to read another Tananarive Due this year, so I'm super excited about this one. Natalie over there at the Weirdo Book Club also recommended 2 nonfiction books about that particular set of tragedies. One of them is available on Kindle Unlimited, so tentatively I want to read that one too, so I have a little bit more insight on the nonfiction side of things. I am just going to give up on the Women in Horror Book Club for right now, because I am halfway through the The Bewitching. I obviously didn't pick up what their read was for September, and I haven't looked at what October's read is because I've got so many other things on the docket I want to do. Like, I also want to read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley this month, and the reason I want to do it this October specifically is because in November, Guillermo del Toro's take on Frankenstein is coming out, and I just want to be 100% up to date with that. Also, October is the traditional time for the Love in the Night Paranormal Readathon, and I want to try to read their group book as well as read, I want to say, 4 other random paranormal romances that week. Hopefully I'll be vlogging it all for you guys and you'll get to be there with me, because this is like decent weather in my area of the country. I think it's fun to like add in some romance with all of those horror reads I want to pick up. I also want to play the TBR Harvest, which is a month-long readathon hosted by Leandra at Leandra the TBR Zeros channel, and I'll link that down below. I'm specifically gonna do the graveyard walk for mood readers, and that way I'll have a little bit more freedom with what books I do or don't pick up. I'm gonna be trying to do the SCAREathon 2.0 hosted by this Kiwi, and I'm hoping that just like a lot of the horror books and maybe some of the paranormal romance books I pick out will fit into her prompts. And I am considering trying to do the Victoberthon hosted by Books and Things. I don't necessarily have a Victorian read on the docket right now, but I think it could be cool like to pick up a little bit of Victorian poetry, or maybe to research a Victorian Gothic novella and to add that onto the list too. I also have a pretty busy release season scheduled for us. Tentatively, I am planning to do 3 videos each week, and in the back half of October I'm planning to release my Lestat the Vampire videos. I'm still feverishly working on those presentations right now, and I'm hoping to film them not next week but the week after, and we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of nervous about that, but you know, I want to for sure vlog the Love in the Night Paranormal Readathon and share that with you. I still have an Amazon Originals Creatures Features video for you. I have 3-4 different Gothic reviews that I could put out. Let me know in those comments down below what exactly you would like to see in October, because right now I have more videos than I could publish ready to go. Plus, I really want to give you those Vampire Lestat ones too. Oh, and I want to finish Rachel Gillig's Dark Window series, because Heather over at He Booktubes is actually hosting a read-along with those books, and I have read One Dark Window this year, and I'm sort of skimming through it to be prepared for the first discussion, and then I'm 20% into the second book, and I need to finish that up before the second reading review happens. So there's a lot of disconnected things right now going on in October, all of them kind of like fall, warm sort of vibes, probably about half of them scary and half of them on the romance side. I'm really excited for October. It's my month. I love these books. I love this kind of fall seasonal weather, and I hope all of you guys have fun plans for October too. Talk to me in those comments down below. What is your one favorite plan for October? And as always, keep reading.